Hello, Hereford, and welcome to the 2023-2024 school year. I am your proud principal, Mr. Covert, and I have an outstanding administrative team with us again this year, so I'll let them say hello and introduce themselves.
Hi everybody, it's Mrs. Book. I am the administrator for letters P through Z, if that is where your last name is. Also worked with the schedule and pretty much all things related to graduation for seniors.
I'm Mr. Arrington. I work with alphabets A through G. Any concerns with parking? I'm the person.
Hello, I'm Miss Greenberg. I have alphabet H to O, and I'm in charge of enrichment.
So today we're going to talk to you about the student handbook, and I know we do this every year, but it's really important that we take the time to go through it with you. Your homeroom teacher will be giving you a paper copy of this, and so feel free to follow along as we go through it. So the purpose here is to talk about expectations for students. There have been some changes in county policy and the rules, so we'll kind of go through those as we go along, but really the goal here is just to make sure that you are the best student you can be and have the best experience at BCPS. So the handbook is broken down into several different sections. Make sure you take time to go through the handbook front to back, but really these sections break down what covers it. We have talked about student rights and responsibilities, what the code of conduct is, the discipline process, how we can support you through social emotional learning and strategies we have to support you, your rights in terms of appeal, confidentiality, something big here that you find in high school, bullying, harassment, that includes cyberbullying, and then we'll also talk about things like drugs and alcohol and abuse. So the compass is the governing document for success in Baltimore County, and what we're talking about fits in domain 2, which is safe and supportive environment. But that safe and supportive environment really sets the stage for your success in terms of learning, in terms of achieving at a high level, and then being successful after high school in whatever your college and career choices may be. So here's the deal. You're a student, you have rights and responsibilities. And if you are taking American government, you'll learn more about them this year. And if you took American government in the past, hopefully you remember that as a student, you have rights and responsibilities. So your rights includes privacy, personal property, free speech, due process, have a safe learning environment, and non-discrimination. And so these are kind of what your rights are. They really expand on these in the student handbook, so make sure you read through those. But on top of having those rights, you also have a responsibility. You're responsible to coming to school. Coming to school is probably one of the most important things you can do, so be here on time. Also, there's a responsibility to know the discipline process. You have a responsibility to follow those policies. You have responsibilities to follow the county dress code, to use free speech appropriately, to use technology appropriately, and also use your devices appropriately, whether it's your BCPS device or whether it's your cell phone.
When it comes to discipline, the policy and rules referred in the handbook are guided by federal and state law. The policies that govern discipline policies are those related to the Code of Conduct Policy 5500, Student Behavior Policy 5550, and Suspensions and Expulsions Policies 5560. Our school administrators are knowledgeable of these policies and make every effort to abide by them. Parents and students should familiarize themselves with the Code of Conduct. Following the Code of Conduct will help students avoid logical consequences. The BCPS Code of Student Conduct is found in Policy 5500, states that students should come to school consistently, be active learners by getting involved with their education, bring to school only those things for school, be positive and respectful, and take responsibility. Policy 5550, which outlines the student's discipline process, was developed with student success in mind. Within the policy are categorical offenses sorted by severity. For example, Category 1 offenses are less serious offenses. These offenses may result in suspension, but should be handled without a student's removal from school. Category 2 offenses are more serious. These offenses tend to result in a suspension from school if the principal is able to show the disruptive nature of the student's behavior or how the student's behavior poses a threat. A Category 3 offense are most likely the result of suspension from school with the recommendation for an extended suspension or an expulsion. These offenses should involve the Baltimore County Police Department charging a student. Now, this next slide is very important. The Code of Student Conduct and the logical consequences outlined in this student handbook applies to all students attending Baltimore County public schools or programs. The Code Student of Conduct also applies to situations that occur off school property. Students should be aware that the Code of Conduct applies while on field trips, at sporting events and other extracurricular activities, and on school buses, and while walking to and from school. Regardless of where the incident takes place, school administrators have the scope of responsibility to intervene if they have reasons to believe that an incident has impacted or will impact the school community in a negative manner. It is critically important that students and parents understand the scope of school administrators' authority. When a principal has decided that a student's conduct warrants a suspension, the principal can issue a suspension that is between 1 and 10 days. A suspension under 10 days is called a local suspension. If the principal feels that the student's behavior was so egregious that a local suspension is insufficient, the principal may request a longer suspension from the student conduct hearing officer. The student conduct hearing officer has been designated by the superintendent to hear discipline cases on the behalf and make decisions about long-term removals from school. Only the student conduct hearing officer can authorize a suspension of more than 10 days. With all local suspensions, parents and guardians can appeal the principal's decision to suspend. For local suspensions, the executive director of school support will hear the appeal. And for board suspensions, the Board of Education would hear the appeal if the suspension is more than 10 days. Students and parents are strongly encouraged to become familiar with the system's disciplinary process. The Office of Transportation has published a code of conduct that bus drivers and school administrators will continue to use to address misbehavior on the school bus. The code classifies unacceptable behavior into 4 levels and provides potential consequences at each level. Students should know that riding the bus is a privilege. This privilege may be temporarily denied or permanently revoked if misconduct jeopardizes the safe operation of the school bus or the safety of students riding the bus. School suspensions is also possible for misconduct on the bus. School buses are equipped with cameras that also captures audio. These cameras monitor the passengers' areas of the bus, such as students are subject to video and audio recording. The objective is to provide an important tool to assist the driver and administration in managing students' conduct on the bus.
Over the spring and summer, the student handbook was revised to include some new language. The language has been added, was done so as a result of some situations that occurred last year. The new language is meant to clarify processes, procedures, and expected outcomes associated with violations of the Code of Conduct. For example, the new language makes it quite clear that a student who refuses to be searched can be disciplined. Refusing to let administrators conduct a search does not prevent a student from facing consequences. Quite the opposite is true. A student who refuses a search is setting themselves up for a consequence. New language has been added that makes it clear that illegal drugs are not acceptable. While state law allows adults to purchase and use cannabis in a responsible way, students are still prohibited from possessing, distributing, and using cannabis even in an edible form. Drugs are drugs. Simply because a drug appears in a more acceptable form does not make it acceptable for students. Students are still prohibited from having and sharing food products that contain drugs. You never truly know what is in an edible. To prevent unintended consumption of edibles, students should not accept food products from other students. Some students have misled classmates and given them edibles just to see how they react. Again, to avoid consuming an edible, students should refrain from taking food from other students. I don't know is not an acceptable defense when facing consequences for using drugs on school property. Students who leave their school during the day and return could face discipline charges. Administrators who may also prohibit them from re-entering. Allowing students to freely come and go and to access the building without restriction poses a safety risk, as does letting unauthorized visitors into the building through side doors and back doors. New language in the student handbook empowers administrators to discipline students who create such threats related to leaving school grounds and admitting unauthorized visitors into the building. Students who are suspended are not permitted on BCPS property. A student who comes to school while suspended could face trespassing charges. New language has been added to the student handbook to extend trespassing to include students who show up at another school without having a legitimate reason for being there. Students who are unauthorized to be on any school's property are trespassing. If a student is on a school's property to cause trouble, the student could face serious consequences depending on what happens. If the student's presence creates a dangerous situation, the student could face expulsion charges at their home school. Principals will be working collaboratively to identify and hold accountable students who make unauthorized visits to other schools. The telecommunications policy prohibits students from misusing technology. Recording fights and sharing videos is a misuse of technology. Airdropping fights and other graphic content is a misuse of technology. The new language that has been added to the student handbook makes this misuse of technology clear. Students who engage in such practices could receive disciplinary consequences. A strategy for preventing code of conduct violations on the bus or in school is knowing how to make responsible decisions. Making responsible decisions is a part of social emotional learning. Students should review this page very closely. This page informs students of what they can do to promote their own social emotional learning and growth. This page also lets you know what you can do when you are feeling a certain way, how you can set goals for yourself, and how you could relate to others, how you can create positive relationships, and how to make responsible decisions. Other areas that make up social emotional learning include self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. Social emotional learning is not an alternative to discipline. Teaching students the SEL competencies does not prevent students from receiving disciplinary consequences when appropriate. This page is an opportunity for students to identify people who can support them when needed. The value of this page is it allows students to identify specific people that they trust to act in their best interest. Here, students should identify some of their closest friends, teachers, and whoever they rely on in a crisis. The information that we want students to provide here cannot be found in our student information system. So note, this is a perforated page that you can easily tear out and complete for yourself and turn into your homeroom teachers for future reference. Along with the previous 2 pages, these are meant to be a resource for you if you're seeking social emotional well-being support. After sitting for this presentation, students and parents should acknowledge that they received a student handbook and that they understand the information mentioned in this presentation. Students can provide their acknowledgement either by completing and signing the paper at the end of the handbook, or you can log into Focus and click the electronic form. Parents and guardians can also provide their acknowledgement in writing or through the Focus Parent Portal. Directions for this electronic form are available.
Cell phones are not to be used during instruction. They may only be used at a teacher's discretion. Cell phones should be silenced and off during class and enrichment and away unless your teacher permits use. Cell phone use is permitted before homeroom, in the hallway, during transitions, and during lunch periods, given that it's not a distraction to those around you. Backpacks. Students may not carry backpacks during the day. Backpacks must be in your locker before homeroom and can't be removed at dismissal time. The only bag that you may carry is the BCPS laptop bag. If you would like a replacement, please come to the office and ask. It's the one pictured to the right. And you may carry a small pencil pouch clutch bag. If you have a medical need to use your backpack, Ms. Perry must give you permission. Students are expected to use their BCPS issued device during each class period. That includes classroom assignments, activities, and assessments. It is the teacher's discretion to allow you to use your own personal device. Please note that the usage of BCPS technology and/or the network is bound by the Technology Acceptable Use Policy. It is your responsibility to care for your Chromebook. You will be charged a replacement cost for a lost Chromebook, which is $355, and a lost charger, which would be $40. You will also be assessed fines for intentional or careless damage to a Chromebook. This is the TAUP, the Technology Acceptable Use Policy. Of particular note, in red you can read, I will not attempt to bypass the security settings or internet filters. And you understand that vandalization is prohibited, which includes, but not limited to, accessing, modifying, or destroying equipment, programs, files, or settings in any computer or technology resource. These are some logical consequences related to student devices. Category 1 is disrespect and insubordination, harassment, including nuisance or electronic communications to students or staff members, or use of your electronic device for non-educational purposes. Category 2 could be destruction and or vandalism of school property. We did want to remind students about extracurricular eligibility. To be eligible to participate in an extracurricular activity, not just athletics, but also theater groups, musical groups, dance groups, robotics, etc. It's a privilege. It is not a right. And you are required to maintain academic eligibility, which is stated there in the highlighted portion. You have to have higher than a 2.0 grade point average and cannot have more than one E in any marking period. Eligibility is determined by the marking period prior to the marking period which you want to be eligible. So for fall eligibility, it's determined by your spring marking period for report card. If you need to know if you're eligible for extracurricular activities, you can submit. You can acquire your report card from Focus from last marking period, or you can ask anybody in the office to let you know.
All right, so just to kind of wrap things up, everybody, your parents are a really important part of the process. And I know when we have you in for meetings, whether it's about discipline or success or how you're doing in classes, we always reach out to your parents. And it's not because we're trying to get you in trouble at home. We're not trying to jam you up, but what we're trying to really do is engage your parents, because your success is dependent not only on your teachers and administrators and you, but also your parents and family. So please know that we are going to engage them for positive reasons, because they are an important part of the process. All right, so what you're going to do now is sign off on the handbook acknowledgments. There are two. The first one is for the BCPS handbook. You will get to sign this off in Focus. You got a copy of the handbook as a hard copy today. And so when you go into Focus, on the left there's a little button that says Forms, and you're going to click Handbook Acknowledgement. You will fill that out electronically and hit Submit. The second acknowledgement that you are going to fill out is for our HHS student handbook. This is located in your planner, but it's also located on our website in the parent section. This really just takes a BCPS handbook and applies it more specifically to Hereford. You will sign off on this on the piece of paper. So take the time now and sign off on your BCPS handbook online on Focus and the paper-based one. It is going to be a great year this year, Hereford. We are so excited for you all to be here. If you ever need anything, come find us as administrators, because we are here to support you every day. Have a great school year, and as always, go Bulls.